So I was watching Mitch Albom, and I don't know if you know, he wrote that book, Tuesdays with Morrie, a bunch of years ago, which was a big hit.
It was very good.
It was
tearjerker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
Shocking.
But they liked it a lot. I found it to be empty. And I never really, which is why I based that character Tuesdays with More on my podcast, which, yeah, if you're not listening to it, what's the matter with you? And so he wrote another book called Have a Little Faith. Mm-hmm. And this is all part of his little snake oil tour he's doing of trying to get soccer moms to buy his books. And, or who else? Anybody? I don't know who else. I shouldn't impugn the integrity of
Aren't
soccer
we all
moms.
snake oil salesmen in the end?
He just
Jimmy?
seems very Oprah Winfrey-like, which I like Oprah. I'm just saying, but there's also a lot of shallowness to their spirituality, and we're gonna see it right now. So here he wrote this book, and he's being interviewed by this other guy on PBS. What's his name?
Barry
Ben?
Kilbrick.
Barry Kilbrick.
Barry Kilbrick.
Kilbrick, and he's a fantastic. You're gonna love him, and he's cousins of Richard Simmons. He's
a little unctuous.
Yeah.
This guy.
Unctuous.
Yeah.
Love that word.
Yeah.
Love that word.
I have to look that up in between. So I thought that meant uncle-like.
No.
No, that's avuncular.
That's avuncular. That's right.
okay.
Yeah. He's
See?
not avuncular.
Don't have to be smart
Which
to
sounds
be a
like a
comedian.
stairway thing, so I always get that one confused.
Don't have to be smart to be a comedian. I'm proving that every day. So here we go. So he sits down with this reporter, and it's Mitch Albom, and asks him about. In the book, he wrote that there was a rabbi he ran into whose daughter died when she was very young, and how does he reconcile that? Right. So this is what the rabbi said in the book. Let's listen.
And you say, you know, how does a man believe in something that transcends us if that's what's allowed?
If a bad thing happened.
If a
terrible
bad,
thing.
Terrible thing.
Right.
And yet he says these words that you write, it's far more comforting to think that God listened and said no than to think nobody's out there.
I honestly believe that's true.
Yeah, so the relationship with God is a lot like my relationship with my agent. So, like, it's much nicer to think that there's someone just not answering the phone, right?
Than screening.
Than actually not be there.
Right, exactly.
I actually have an agent out there. That's how I think.
Right. I don't know what he's doing, but he's looking out for me.
It's nice to know he said no.
Right.
He said no.
Excessively or irritatingly flattering, oily.
Oh,
Just I suddenly got afraid that I'd bet it wrong, but no, that was exactly it. Like,
well, it's nice to see that Mitch Albom. You know, God didn't actually even say no; He said nothing, which is just as comforting to Mitch, apparently.
Well, to some people, it might be. I mean, I believe in if people are comforted by things, I don't want to take their comfort away. I mean, that's
Yes.
unless they're douchebags.
Yes.
But that's a strange logic. That's really kind of.
Well, what he's saying is the logic, I think, of what you're referring to is him saying, let's not make the mistake of believing nobody's out there just because nobody's out there.
Right, exactly. and I do I don't believe in there's anyone out there, but I like to believe that I'm having a conversation with myself in some bigger way or something, or the leaves or the trees or whatever it is. But that brings me comfort, but I don't pretend that there's someone out there, listening.
So what I think, if I can just put it in my own words, I think what Mitch is saying is you have to give God the benefit of the doubt, and he must have a perfectly good reason to kill children.
Pretty much, yes. when you bring logic and reason to it, Jimmy, that's exactly what he's saying.
Let's play the next clip. Let's play it.
In fact, some wise people have said that you are never closer to God than when you're angry at him. How could you do this to me? Because you're engaging. You're believing that there's someone to ask questions of.
Yes, that's what we all aspire to, an abusive relationship with God. That's what he's describing there. Is he not doing that? Considering he's God, he's being held to a very, very low standard.
Once again.
A very low standard for God. He's not talking to me, he's doing shitty stuff to me, I'm so fucking angry at him, God damn it.
Yeah, our level of intimacy is about anger. That's good.
Yes. That's when I'm really close and I'm pissed off. Come here. I like getting angry at God because the makeup sex is so much better. What the fuck? This is people buy this guy's book. Okay, so there's more from him. Let's play the next clip.
Think of when you were a child. If your parents were in the house, wasn't it always better to be able to run to mom and dad and ask them something, even say no, than if they suddenly weren't there? And even you could do whatever you wanted when they weren't there, but all of a sudden after a certain amount of time you miss them. You miss someone telling you no, you miss somebody giving you guidance. I think it's the same thing on an adult, grander scale with the sense of a God.
Yes, and I think that child analogy is perfect because if you buy this shit, you have a 4-year-old mentality.
It is from a psychological point of view. It is completely, this is exactly what this is about, is having a parental figure to look over you and to protect you,
Yes.
which is understandable, but at some point we all have to be grown-ups and adults, and either you're
and arrest God for child neglect.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, psychologically it completely makes sense to me.
Okay.
I like that he finds the simplest thing in the world to decide. I love it when people find something that couldn't prove their point less, but is such a truism that people would say, oh yeah, it's true. I remember when I was 6 and I liked my parents. Therefore, there's a God.
Argue with that, motherfucker.
There's a God. Okay, so now he goes on to demean our life here on earth. Let's listen.
We do want to believe that there's a little bit more than just being here on this earth, running around, and then being worm food when we're done. And so I think he was right when he said better to think the answer to your prayers was "I'm sorry, no," than nobody's listening.
Yeah, that's a good way to prove. That's a good way to prove that there's a God, is to really, really wish that there is one.
That's right.
That's basically what he's saying right there. That was pretty sad, I thought. That was a pretty sad...
And that the only way I get to have meaning in my life is by believing in God. Like, I don't get to create my own meaning.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like, I like to think that we're more than just run around here and then worm food. Well, maybe because this life can only mean something if there's another pretend imaginary life waiting for you after this one is over with. That's the only way this life can mean something.
Only way.
It's the crazy. Maybe if you stopped believing in superstition and invisible men in the sky and actually tried to answer some of the existential questions that make you sound like a fucking moron, maybe you could have a meaningful life here on Earth. Because this is the only life you get, Mitch. It's all over. There's no double album.
I don't think you're being fair because you cut it off, but I'm pretty sure that's Barry Kilbrick's next question. He says just that.
Oh,
you can feel it coming.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Worm food, Mitch. You have a pretty high opinion of yourself, don't you? Worm food. This is that's all we are. Running around the worm. What could this possibly be?
Once again, there's the choice: the black and the white. That's it. That's all we get, right? Okay. Nothing
You know
in the
how
middle.
watching Mitch Albom argue for religion in order to plug a book is what lets me know there is no God. Right?